This episode is brought to you by Pixel 2 Editions, a full-service fine art printing company. More about them later. Hello and welcome to In the Art Scene podcast, an art podcast that has it all. I'm your host, Galina Marquez, and I invite fascinating people to talk about their personal creative journeys, success stories, and inspiration. We talk about art business and marketing, how to find your creative voice, and all the new trends in the art world like NFT, AI, and such. Join me and my guest for today's conversation. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to In the Art Scene podcast. And I am apologizing for the purring because there's a cat sitting on my shoulder and he just refuses to leave the studio. So there's three of us. Sam, my cat, myself, and an amazing fine art photographer, Kristina Varaksina. Kristina is an amazing artist making absolutely wonderful, very essential, very emotional portraiture, addressing all kinds of sociological, socioeconomical issues, racism, body image. I was going through your portfolio, Kristina, and I just couldn't find anything that this world doesn't need to address. I mean, you have like such a variety of topics that absolutely need to be in the center of our attention because it affects so many people. But I would like to give you the word so you can introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Well, my name is Kristina, as you already know. I'm a photographer mainly based in portraiture genre, doing fine art, but also a bit of documentary and commercial work. And I'm primarily based in London.
And this is another one of those awkward interviews when, we both are Russian speakers, but we have to speak English. but that's okay. We can manage.
Sometimes it's more comfortable after having lived for so many years abroad. It's just sometimes easier to just continue speaking English, to be honest.
Yeah, I find myself sometimes mixing English and Russian because I can't remember some of the Russian words, but that's okay. That's gonna be my first question. How long have you lived in London, and how the heck did you get there, and why?
It was a long journey to get to London, to be honest. So I've lived there for 3.5 years now. And I moved there from New York, where I had lived for another 4.5, 5 years. And previously to that, I also lived in California for about the same time as in New York. So 9.5 years total in the US. Yeah.
But you were born in Russia.
Yes, I was born in Russia, in Yekaterinburg, if anyone ever heard of this city, but it's a pretty big city in the middle of Russia, pretty industrial. I grew up there, and then I moved to Moscow for work. I was working in advertising, and eventually I decided to focus on my photography, and then I moved to San Francisco to study photography and get a Master of Fine Arts in Photography.
Well, this is quite a drastic change. Did you always know that you want to be an artist and a photographer?
Maybe not specifically a photographer, but I enjoyed all kinds of visual arts since early childhood. I would draw, I would paint, I would sculpt something, and kinds of crafts. And then I went to children's art school. I really loved it. And then basically the only university in my city that provided kind of arts education was an Academy of Architecture and Arts. So I went there to study architecture and interior design. Then I graduated, and I started working in advertising because I felt like graphic design was the closest to what I wanted to do. But photography was always there. I would photograph all my friends. It's just, I felt like I could offer more through photography to people than I could do through advertising. And it was more rewarding as well. Like people would really, when they look at their photos and they will see like, oh, I had no idea I could look like this, or I am so beautiful. And, I could see that, that emotional response, and it was just so nice, such a rewarding feeling versus working in advertising. Clients are never happy and your ideas never look like your original ideas. So it was
and you need to make a logo much, much bigger.
Yes, and that
yeah, that's so familiar. I've been there.
Then you understand.
Yeah, I do. I totally do. So when you just decided, Moscow is such a cosmopolitan city, and you could have advanced your photography career over there, but you decided to make such a drastic change and move to San Francisco, across the entire globe. So how did that decision come about?
For some reason at that time, I didn't feel like I could get a degree I wanted, or like not degree necessarily. It wasn't about the diploma, but the education that I wanted. And I thought I wanted to do more commercial photography at that time, with my advertising background. I thought I wanted to do like amazing conceptual advertising imagery. And that's why, I was looking at all these universities and academies and colleges. And I got drawn to the one in San Francisco. But then also I felt like back in the day when I lived in Moscow, arts in general weren't really as appreciated. Maybe it was much more niche and elitist. So people like there weren't that many museums, or not museums have always been there, but like smaller galleries and venues for younger artists to show their work. So it wasn't even on the table, that kind of career path. So yeah, it was kind of basically, I felt like I had no choice, that I needed to go somewhere abroad to study it. And since my only foreign language was English, so I was either looking at the US or the UK. And somehow I decided to go to San Francisco.
Nice. So which college in San Francisco did you choose?
At the Academy of Art University.
Nice. That's a great one. That's great. So, tell us a little bit about your time in San Francisco. How was that for you?
It was really different from Moscow.
Yeah, it could have been more different.
Yeah. On so many levels and so many aspects, the city itself, it's a smaller city and there's much less traffic, so you don't feel the pressure of a big city, at least in comparison to Moscow. Like I knew some of my classmates who came from smaller towns. They would see San Francisco as a big city, but for me it was something more manageable. It was quieter, it was very artistic as well. There were a lot of galleries, there were a lot of artists around me, and I think that environment was really, really nurturing for me as an artist, for me as a person even. I think it's changed me a lot. And I felt liberated in some ways. I felt more open-minded. I made a lot of friends. Yeah, it was a really good time. Definitely.
Yeah, San Francisco is such a vibrant place, and people, you are exposed all of a sudden to such a variety of different backgrounds. And foregrounds. I mean, that's something, with San Francisco being so small in comparison to Moscow or even Yekaterinburg, having like this concentrated rainbow of people in one place, and all of them being open and cohabitating with one another. It's just amazing. And I can totally see how it affected you as a person and an artist. Is this the time when you decided you are very interested in exposing the social issues and like things like that in your art?
I think so. I mean, I think all my life I've been interested in sort of solving the problem of woman's place in a modern society, I guess. Um, I would always discuss with all my friends back in Yekaterinburg and my classmates, talking about the limitations that the society places on women, especially growing up in the 90s. I felt like, the female beauty became such a commodity. Like it was your only way to, to achieve something in life,
Yeah.
to get out of your, poor background, or,
Yeah.
to, get a better husband and potentially more successful life. And,
Yeah. Practically, yeah. If you become a trophy wife, you hit a jackpot.
yeah, so that was kind of the concept. But I never really liked that idea, and I never wanted to be judged by my looks, or just to be, mansplained or talked down to. And especially when I started working in the office environment, I always felt like women would most of the time take that secondary role, and they would always listen to the men in the room, and I really hated it.
Especially in advertising.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It was more, even though there were a lot of women working in it, but in terms of decision making, it was more male dominated. And yeah, without going into too much detail, when I was studying there at the Academy of Art, we were basically asked to choose a path, whether we want to do our thesis work based on something more commercial, or based on something more fine art, as they said it. And so I thought, I've already spent a year there, and then that was the choice that was given at that point. And I thought I can actually do something more fine art, and like something more personal. And I thought I should express my ideas about women and their place in the world, in the family, in the society. And that's how it started. It basically was my thesis project that I worked on for a year and a half almost, I think.
Wow.
Photographing different women's and just creating these different scenarios of domestic life and life in general. Basically commenting on social roles as a mother, career, um, yeah, wife, relationship, yeah, all kinds of things.
Wow. I don't think it's on your website. I haven't seen that work, but I would really, really love to see your thesis work. It sounds like a very interesting project, especially since you spent so much time working on it. But you are doing a lot of very beautiful. So your photography has a very interesting um, feel to it. It's almost like I shouldn't say pastel colors, but the colors are a little bit smoothed, and I don't know how, like, you're working with the light in such a way that it makes everything smoother, but at the same time it enhances the details that you want viewers to see, in the way that it's kind of very obvious, but not in your face. I am not a photographer, so again, I apologize. I said at the beginning before we started recording that I'm going to ask stupid questions because I have no idea about photography at all. Although I have spoken with a few photographers here on the show. But I would really love to hear from you to talk about your process and how you work with light and how you work with your subjects, and how you create the compositions, because they're very distinct. I mean, I can really tell like your images apart from other photographers.
Thank you. I think you actually made a really good observation. Maybe it's your visual arts background that helps, but I try to, when I light my subjects, I try to not make it too obvious as to how it was lit, or at least it's not to confuse other photographers. That's not the goal, but so that people don't really focus on the lighting aspect of it, but they take in the image as a whole, and maybe, more feel what it is about, rather than breaking down into these technical aspects. Oh, such a cool lighting, and what are these shadows and this like colors, or like, I really want them to experience it as one, like as if you would a painting maybe, or I guess in the painting you can look at brush strokes, but not always. It's not always kind of the emphasis or the purpose of the artist. So I try to be very subtle with my lighting, and oftentimes I mix different light sources, like for example, warmer light on the face of the person, and then overall kind of cooler light for the rest of the environment. So there's this kind of contrast and a little bit of that juxtaposition of the environment and the background and the person against it. But I do love soft lighting. Not for all of my work I use just a soft light, but I do like it, especially, for example, for my long-term series called The Essence of Beauty, where I photographed I created 25 portraits of different women, and because of that subject, that I wanted to show the female beauty and the alternative way of seeing beauty and understanding beauty and talking about it. I wanted to treat that subject very delicately and photograph them with the most amount of respect. And I felt like the softer light would bring that aspect out, and they would be more confident as well.
Well, yeah, thank you for that explanation. And I also, I kind of want to go along your history and learn about your decision to move to New York from San Francisco, which is another drastically different environment. And then to London, which is another drastically different environment. But I kind of want to stay a little bit on the subject of your portraiture and how you want to like you have such respect for people that you photograph, and obviously you were trying to bring the emotional aspect of their essence as well as the physical beauty, and also your like I have seen the series that you have done. You're an award-winning photographer. I have seen your photos for the Female in Focus very recently. You have done some work for the breast cancer awareness. You have done some work with related to gender identity, and I am just amazed because you are also capable of finding people who are in, like, as them as people are being such a bright representation of what you were trying, the idea that you were trying to show, like the Black albino mother with a Black child, or a trans woman with the scars across the chest, and like all kinds of different people. So I think this is a very difficult thing to find and communicate with those people, to make them like want to be your subjects.
Mm.
So I'm a little bit curious about that, because you have such a variety of portraits, and it almost like you are in the inner circle, and those people know you and trust you. And so how do you find people for your portraits, especially this kind of a hot topics, like really like socially charged?
Yeah, I see. I understand what you mean. And I think it's a question that a lot of portrait photographers are concerned with. So I get this question a lot. How do you find your models? And I remember being a student and having that same question, or just graduated, and how do I find models that are not, that are not fashion models, like wannabe fashion models, wannabe beauty models, because then you kind of hit the same audience that's approximately the same age, and approximately, with certain parameters of good looking, as conventionally described. But if you're interested in unique faces, unique beauty, alternative ways of looking at our bodies and our character and personality and personal issues and life stories, of course you want to find someone who is not within that conventional group, who's maybe older, or with some visual differences or disabilities, or have gone through some changes to their body. And so I think maybe it's just my experience at this point that just helps me finding people, because people either refer them to me, or people reach out through Instagram mainly. I've built also a relationship with a couple of modeling agencies, but particularly one that specializes in different individuals with disabilities. But I think, over the course of my career, I've used all kinds of ways of looking for people. I would reach out to organizations. I would post on Facebook, on Craigslist, word of mouth, just ask friends and friends of friends. So anywhere I can basically reach. It's always hard to convince people who are not interested in being photographed. That's the hard part. So it always helps if you go through their friends or family, and they somehow trust you more that way. So sometimes when I post a model call, model call on Instagram, and I know that people who reply, they are already potentially open to being photographed. So that hard work is done. Like, I don't need to do it. But what I do need to do is to look at them and their potential of being an interesting subject. Because a lot of people want to be photographed, but, as a photographer, you kind of need to be selective. Sometimes it's kind of uncomfortable that you have to be mean in a way, that you think, oh no, that person doesn't look anything interesting, and no, of course everyone is interesting, but that visually some people's features work better than others, so you kind of have to be selective. But yeah, so once that selection is made, I try to schedule a phone call or Zoom call when it comes to personal projects. If it's a, for example, breast cancer campaign, someone organizes it for me. But if it's a personal project, I try to talk to them directly and just see what they're like, what these people are like, what they are into, how they talk, what their body language is like. Is their voice loud or quiet? And all these little aspects of that make them who they are, and what I can. And also, while interviewing them, I can ask them about their life story, and basically that whole, like, all these different elements, they create that image in my head of who they are and what I can tell about them. So that process of selecting and interviewing is really important and essential part of the whole creative process.
Yeah, well, that's interesting how you are actually trying to capture like the whole person, not only the visible features.
Yeah,
and you're
important. Yeah.
and you're doing a beautiful job with that, amazing job. So how okay, you graduated from the Academy of Arts in San Francisco. And then you decided to just go to New York?
No, I stayed. Oh, no, actually, sorry, I need to correct myself. I actually, yes, right after I graduated, I moved to New York for 1 year. Well, I didn't know at that time that it would only be 1 year, but um, thanks to thanks to my boyfriend at the time, I decided to move back to San Francisco again to be together with him. And so I came back a year later and spent another year and a half in San Francisco. And only then I moved to New York, or we together moved to New York. And New York was very, very different. Like, yes, just like you said, it was a major move, a major life change after San Francisco. But maybe because I had already had that experience with life in Moscow, I wasn't so intimidated by New York. And I already had experience, obviously, as a photographer, working as a freelancer, but I already had an experience of teaching photography. While I lived in San Francisco, I taught at the Institute of the Arts of Art Institute of California, and that experience really helped because I got a job almost right away in New York at New York Film Academy. And so it was easy in a way to move into a city where I didn't know anyone or I knew very few people, but already having this job. Like, it's not a full-time job, but it's teaching, it's a couple of classes a week. So that was a good start for me, plus some portfolio that I already had. And that really helped me getting my first clients and things like that.
Hey, In the Arts Scene listeners, do you remember Mark O'Donnell from Pixel 2 Editions? He's been on the show in Season 3, Episode 7, and told us everything we need to know about giclée printing. And take my word for it, Mark and his team are the best in Southern California and beyond. I've been a client of Pixel 2 Editions since 2019, and I've been shouting about them from the rooftops ever since. Luckily, I don't have to do it anymore because I have a podcast. Despite being San Diego local, Mark and his team are working with some of the best photographers and artists from all states, including Clark Little and Kadir Nelson. And frankly, if you are a photographer or a digital artist, you don't need to be local to work with Pixel 2 Editions. Just use a file upload on their website for your heavy images and write down the specs. They can print small proofs for you on any substrate you want and ship them to you for free. And for my listeners, they offer a free 8x10 full image proof on metal. Just tell them that you heard about them on the podcast and they will take care of you. Let me tell you, their metal prints are amazing. Whenever I order mine, they fly off the shelves in no time. So I highly recommend you try it out. And oh, did I mention that they are a full service company? It means that they do everything from color correcting and printing to framing and shipping directly to you or your clients. So don't wait, go to pixel2editions.com, 2 is a number, and editions is plural, or call 858-549-7299. Again, pixel2editions.com, 2 is a number, and editions is plural, or call 858-549-7299. Say hi for me. I have so many questions right here. So first of all, you developed the class while you were still in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And right after you graduated or before you graduated, so you already started teaching.
No, like I said, I moved to New York first, then I came back, okay. And I had a friend who was really interested in teaching, and right after she graduated, she started teaching immediately. And then she decided that she didn't want to teach anymore, and she was looking for someone to replace her. And I decided to just give it a try while I was back in San Francisco. It wasn't really necessarily that I was really into, or I had never had any teaching experience before. So I didn't know if I would enjoy it or I would hate it. So I was just out of curiosity. Let me give it a try. And I was given one class first to teach, then I was given two, and I think by the end of it, I was teaching 3 different classes on different campuses as well. And it was a good experience because I was teaching from the basics to advanced classes, and I could share my experience with students at different stages of their journey as a student or journey towards becoming a photographer. So I enjoyed it. Yeah, it was good.
And now you also have your own personal workshops, right?
Yes, now I do my workshops.
So you liked it. You like teaching.
Yeah, I think it was, San Francisco. I taught there for almost a year, I think, maybe more. Yeah, around 1 year. And then I moved to New York, where I taught for 3 years. And it can be quite tiring and exhausting being a teacher, especially long classes. But if you teach something you really see the value in and you really enjoy yourself, because I taught in New York, I taught multiple different classes, and some classes I liked much more than others. And then I kept on thinking, what if I were given this perfect class that would, kind of be an extension of who I am, of my understanding of what's important in photography, plus also where I could really share my valuable experience in, commercial photography. And I was doing a lot of fashion and beauty at that time. And I thought, instead of teaching, introduction or lighting or Photoshop, I could, I could develop a class that teaches, how to see, how to build an idea. And at that time, there weren't that many classes like that, or at least not at those schools where I taught. That wasn't, that wasn't on anyone's mind, that actually students need that. The schools are interested in giving the technical aspect, teaching you how to light, teaching you the theory of color, teaching you the history of photography, and this. It's very valuable learning how other photographers think, but also how to find your voice and how to build ideas. It's kind of like it stays in the background. It's not the focus of those discussions in those classes. And I thought it would be great to build a whole workshop around that, about, expressing yourself as an artist, finding who you are. And so that's why I decided to create my own workshop.
Oh, that's awesome, and I will make sure to leave the information about your workshop. If you're still teaching and people can sign up, I will make sure to put all the information in the show notes.
Thank you.
Yeah, we actually know the artist. So we had my dear friend who actually introduced us, Gala Simonova, who graduated from your class, who is also an amazing award-winning portrait photographer. So
yes,
if you guys don't remember that episode, just scroll back. I'll leave the link for that episode as well in the show notes, if you're curious. Well, so you moved to New York. You got a job. It's not a full-time job, but you are teaching at the New York Film Academy. You also have your workshop. You have your clients, and then you're also developing your fine art practice.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's a lot to juggle.
Yes, and I think that time in New York was probably the busiest time in my life. Although I whenever I think back of my different experiences living in different places, I wouldn't say I ever had time to relax. But in New York, it was just a very fast-paced life. When you run to teach classes, then you come back, then you edit the photos, that's something you shot the day before, then you teaching again, then you editing again, then you shooting, and it was intense. I had some months where I didn't have even a single day off with classes and with shoots, and then I would just edit at night. But unfortunately, because of that rhythm, I didn't really have that much time to focus on personal work, on like really, really important fine art work where I would express some deeper thoughts and some important issues that I wanted to sort of comment on. Yes, I felt like I had a gap between the years at the university where I could create that fine art work, just focusing on what was really essential. And then the years after, I was just trying to build a career, trying to just build portfolio, meet new clients, working with an agency that represented me. They would direct me and suggest you should shoot more of this so that we can sell you more to more clients. And so I felt like the priorities at that point of my life weren't towards fine art. So I had a different focus towards more commercial work. But then the situation changed when I moved to London, and COVID-19 happened.
So okay. So how did you decide to move to London?
It's a complex question. I think even when I lived in San Francisco and I loved it there, and it was a very nurturing environment, like I said, and I met a lot of wonderful people who we are still friends with, but I never really felt at home. I felt I wouldn't say I wanted to go back to Russia, but I just felt like it's still something that wasn't like I don't know, I wasn't built to have that kind of life. And I thought, well, if I move to New York, maybe I'll find my place there. But New York turned out to be even worse in terms of me feeling at home. I struggled to connect with people even more so. So I felt like I should move to Europe just because I have more friends here and I can travel more often to see my family and also the family of my partner. And yeah, so I was kind of waiting for the right moment when to move. And then finally, the moment came. That was summer 2019, when I felt I was ready. Everything was ready for the move. And yeah, I just moved to London. And London, I always loved the city, and it's also an English-speaking country. So I felt like it would be, an easy transition compared to, moving from Russia to San Francisco. And I also had an agency representing me in London, which was a great help as well in terms of starting your, career, not from scratch, but again, building it up from a certain level. So yeah, it wasn't that dramatic. And it was really inspiring actually to be in a new city, in a new environment.
Well, nice. Well, so the agency was representing you as a commercial photographer, right?
Yeah.
So, and then of course COVID-19 happened.
Yes.
So as we all know, it was you moved right before, let's say, like 6 months before COVID-19 happened, and then this is when you created your series Isolation.
Yes, I started working even, while I was in New York. I started doing some self-portraits. I wasn't just, spending or allowing that much time to really work on it. And I also did a portrait with this young woman who had alopecia while I was in New York. And when I brought that work to London, and so many people responded to that image. Well, it was a series of images. And I won an award with one of the images, one of her portraits. It was in some exhibitions, so it grabbed a lot of attention. And a lot of people also commented on it online. And they were reaching out to me saying, thank you for showing, there's other ways of seeing beauty. Someone like me, I've never seen them, models or anyone. in the visual media looking like me. So I felt, oh, this is something really, really important. This conversation is not really happening. Like, we're not looking at boosting female confidence at all. Like, it was just, here are the standards of beauty, and we all are going to follow them. I felt that was still the conversation in 2019. It's amazing to think that now we don't think like that at all, but it's really changed only in the past 3-4 years.
Yeah, a lot of changes happened during the pandemic. I'm sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to make a quick comment about the alopecia. Is this a condition of skin where the melatonin is not evenly distributed, or is it a different one?
It's the one where people don't grow any hair.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah, I like. Okay, I'm as bad in biology as I am in photography.
So, no worries. The other one is called vitiligo or vitiligo, depending where you are, how you pronounce it. But yeah, so that one, when you lose melatonin or it's some kind of changes happening in the skin, and you have these patches of different color in your skin.
Melanin, not melatonin. Melatonin is when the
melanin. Yes,
melanin. Yes. Okay. Now I confused you.
Yes, but no, yeah. I think people understand what we are referring to. Yeah. But yeah, so she had no hair, no eyebrows, beautiful eyelashes, and she was just amazing, stunning. And I photographed her with a cat. The cat was also
I saw that image. Yeah,
with no hair.
It's a
and
Sphinx naked cat. Yeah,
yeah. Similar skin color as well, and blue eyes, just like the woman. And so they made a really good pair, and that was kind of the idea, to emphasize her beauty and to sort of draw that parallel, because she really reminded me of a cat when I saw her moving. And I thought, oh, I need to find a cat and photograph them together. And so that's how that picture came about. But yeah, it was a turning point, and I finally had time to think about all these different things. I could continue my self-portrait series. I could start that series on the alternative beauty. Then through that series, I also met some people who identify as non-binary or who are transgender. So after talking to them and like getting to know, their story and this whole issue, I just became interested in transgender conversation, I guess. And then I met someone who changed their gender, and I shot the whole story. We collaborated because he's also an artist and really talented artist. So we collaborated. I followed him for a couple of days, basically documenting his life and relationship with people, his different moments in life. And yeah, so it's it kind of, like a snowball, I guess. You continue working on something, then you meet someone, then somebody introduce you to someone, or just the subjects, they come up, and I'm genuinely interested in people and in their stories. So I always have these kinds of ideas, like, oh, I should do a story with this person, or should capture this person's life, or so it's always somewhere in the background is cooking.
That's really interesting. And so I started this podcast in the middle of the pandemic, and obviously in 2021, 2022, I was talking to many artists and their experiences or how their practice has changed during the pandemic or due to isolation. And what I found is that for many artists, the isolation was kind of a blessing in disguise, because they had this, forced moment to look inward or focus on something. They had this time that they couldn't spend on anything else, so they would just focus on their art. So it sounds like this was something that happened to you as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that was the time when I started, I developed that online course, and I ran that workshop for 4 or 5 times. I don't remember now. But I had all the students from all over the world, joining all these classes. And it was also really, really inspiring to suddenly be able to talk to other artists and sort of guide them or somehow help them with their ideas, contribute, co-create in some instances. And it was really inspiring and rewarding. And it was something that I realize now that I really needed. So no, I'm very grateful for those 2.5 years. So yeah, it was great.
Yeah. So pandemic was that time of development of your own art practice. You enhanced your voice. You were able to voice the ideas and issues that you really wanted to bring attention to. And how are things looking for you? I mean, you've been to London for 3 years. First of all, are you feeling at home? And secondly, what's in the books for you right now? Are you now primarily a fine art photographer? Because I see your work in New York Times Magazine and other magazines. So I don't know if they're picking your like your work, your personal work for their covers, or you were actually doing some commercial work for them, or so, obviously you're working now with some nonprofit organizations who are cause driven. So like, yeah, what's your current situation and your near future, where your art is going?
I think also because of the situation with productions during the pandemic years, there were less commercial work or less advertising, like big scale productions happening. And naturally, I kind of transitioned to shooting more editorial work, specifically like portraits for magazines like The Telegraph and The Guardian mainly. And then last year, I was really fortunate to shoot for Time magazine their Women of the Year, 2 covers. That was, I guess, the highlight of my last year in terms of career as a commercial or editorial photographer. And I really enjoy photographing real people as opposed to photographing fashion models that I used to. That industry, it used to be a big part of my life, and that's the people I dealt with most of the time. Models who are trained to be in front of the camera, and sort of they would mold themselves into a story that you are trying to tell, or fashion editors trying to tell, or art director. And it wasn't really personal. So, and in contrast, people who I photograph these days, they are regular people, regular in the sense that they're not fashion models or beauty models, but they are, they have other achievements in life, humanitarian work, or journalists or writers, and someone who is definitely interesting as a person. And it's nice to get to know them and think about, okay, how do I tell their story in a short amount of time that is given to me. So that's what I currently do a lot. I still do a bit of commercial work. And to your question about fine art, I've definitely grown more as a fine art photographer in terms of collaborating more or working with more galleries and exhibiting my work more and participating in different events and competitions. And yeah. But I still think I divide my time equally, I think, between fine art and work that is commissioned.
Thank you for the insight into your current practice. So yeah, I spoke to another photographer here on the show, and she is a U.S.-based photographer. She is more of like a glam nude portraiture photographer. So she was talking about her experience during the pandemic, the isolation, that it was really, really difficult to find models locally or travel to work with models who live elsewhere. So she was talking about remote photography, and I know that you are such. Well, first of all, you are such a citizen of the world. You have moved so much, and also I believe that finding subjects for your work locally is not always, I mean, there are only so many people that you can, short travel to, right? Have you had any experience with remote photography?
No, I haven't. I tried once for a client, and I realized I maybe I'm too much of a perfectionist, because we tried with the model to find a good light in her house, and I wasn't happy either with the light or the background or things in the foreground or something. There was always something that I felt like, oh, it's not going to work, and I got really frustrated with it. I think, yeah, if there was an absolute need that I had to do it, I would do it, of course. Like, I would probably find a solution. But I thought, if it's not a requirement, and if I can find a way to shoot someone, photograph someone in person, I'd rather do that. And during those like lockdowns and those periods when we were not allowed to travel, I mostly photographed myself as a subject, so that worked out anyway. But in the brief moments in between the lockdowns, or even there were some periods where we still were allowed to work, and sort of me and my models subjects, we decided that this is considered work, so they came to me to my studio, and I photographed them in person. So yeah, I guess in that way I'm not really flexible, because I want to have the lighting under my control, also the wardrobe and all these details. I can fix their hair if something doesn't work, and I like making sure that I give them the most of me, and yeah, I put all the effort into it, and I would feel like I'm slacking if I'm shooting through a screen.
Well, yeah, I totally can see it. Because yeah, your environments and your compositions are so in a way precise that I can totally see how you would want to have control over the set. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being with me today. We're almost at the top of the hour. The last thing I wanted to ask you is how our listeners can find you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you. You can find me just my first name, last name, Kristina Varaksina .com.
And KS is in Varaksina is KS. It's not X, right?
Yes, it's KS.
Yeah.
Yes. Varaksina, and Kristina with a K, which is always confusing, or often confusing. But Instagram, same first name, last name, no other characters, quite easy to find. I think from there you can explore more if you would like to. Maybe you'll see some links to articles or something like that.
Well, and I will make sure to put all the links in the show notes to Kristina's social media, her website, some articles that I found, the workshop, some maybe of your award-winning work.
Thank you very much.
So yeah, go to intheartscene.com if you want more of those details. So everything will be collected there for you. Very easy. And one more little question for you guys out there. If you like the show, please share it with your friends, because it really helps me and helps the artists that I interview to get more exposure. So like it, share it, leave a review, because if you leave a review, more people will be able to find us. Kristina, thank you so much for your time. It was such a wonderful conversation. You are such a beautiful person, and you're doing an amazing work. Absolutely, I'm absolutely in awe.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well, have a nice day, and we'll see you again in the art scene. It has been another episode of In the Art Scene podcast. If you liked today's conversation, please give us a good review on Apple, and go listen to other great stories. Check out our website intheartscene.com, or follow us on Instagram at intheartscene for more content. If you are a creative and you want to share your story, shoot us a message from the website or DM us on Instagram. Look forward to seeing you next time in the art scene.